Howdy, y'all. Welcome to Hazenboro Craftworks here on the Hazenboro Homestead and our humble whiskey room. I'm the Alchemist. Welcome to week 2 of November, the month of Thanksgiving, and the month that makes me ponder giving thanks. And right now, I'm pretty thankful for all y'all who had a little patience with me as I had some technical difficulties. So I kind of had to redo my whole plan for the week because I just could not get that video to upload on Monday. So we're starting over with a new video and had to rearrange things and kind of cram things into 2 videos this week. But that doesn't make this week any less sincere, than what I had in mind. And here, week 2 of November, week 2 of what I'm thankful for, it's that whiskey community. It's whiskey folks. You know, I've always said that whiskey is only better by the folks you share it with, and when you've got a good whiskey community, it's true. Whiskey's always better. You know, they're there to support you. They're there for the banter. They're there for the laughs. Or they're there just for a silent pour sometimes. And right now, as you can see in front of me, I'm surrounded by the giving spirit of the whiskey community. And, well, I'm here to give thanks to all y'all in my whiskey community and all y'all who have shown your giving spirit here. Just a little thanks for sharing the whiskeys that y'all like with the likes of me. So, to get started in week 2, my week of thanks, I've got a lot of my Bourbonado friends who've given me some samples. And I want to start out left to right for y'all, but on my right with my friend Philip. As you can see, he does quite the job on his bottles. He wax dips them to give it a nice look, and he also has these fancy labels. I don't know how well you can see that on the camera because they are kind of light. But he's given me a few different whiskeys to try, and you know, it's difficult for me to choose one out of any of these samples that all my whiskey friends have given me. You know, I wanted to go, he's given me 2 Red Forks. And I wanted to go with the Heist, because that just kind of sounded intriguing to me. But that one didn't make the cut. It was a difficult choice. He's also given me 2 McBriar whiskeys. And I tell you what, McBriar is such a good whiskey. So it was really hard to turn that one up, to turn either of these up. And then he's also given me a Cedar Brook. And, you know, I'm working with them for a barrel pick. So it was hard not to want to sample that one since I'm, you know, planning on doing a barrel pick there hopefully in 2026. But what I did decide to go with is this handshake that is so very hard to read. And maybe perhaps it's that curiosity aspect of it. But even more so, it's that what I could read was Thresh and Winnow. And Thresh and Winnow is a newer distillery. In the early 2000s it started, out of Chicago. And they're a distillery that's known for their high-end single grain whiskeys, using high-end ingredients and using, again, a single grain for all of their whiskeys. And I don't know which whiskey this is exactly because I can't read that label. So, Philip, if you're watching this, boy, I'd love for you to put in the comments which one we've got here to kind of see if my nose and my palate is even on, even close to what the note should be. That always makes me curious because all of our palates are different. Okay, that's interesting right up front. Right up front, I get a definite grain, but not just grain. There's like a creamy, like a vanilla cream, a sweet vanilla cream scent. Along with some grains. Let's go in, let's do my usual Alchemist sips and see if things open up and if that nose changes at all. Okay, on the palate, that is also very creamy. And it's quite viscous as well. Oh, that's a good one. You know, right now on the nose, it's reminding me a little bit of a Scotch because along with that vanilla cream, there's some honey and like an orchard fruit. I'd have to call out. I'll stick with orchard fruit for now. Let me just take another sip or so. Because this one's really got me intrigued. On the nose, I'd have to say like a sweet green apple, like perhaps a Granny Smith. Have you ever had a Granny Smith apple when they're nice and sweet? That's what I get on the nose. And that grainy smell, really, it's more herbal, like more herbal, like an herbal tea or something like this. It's yeah, I'd have to say an herbal tea. So I get this creamy vanilla and like a creamy honey with it too, kind of mixed in there, and this green apple, sweet green apple on the nose. And I love the viscosity of it. But I have to say on the palate, I get that creamy vanilla and like a honey toffee mixture. Not just the honey like I get on the nose. There's more of a honey toffee and that creaminess. But I don't have that. I don't have that green apple so much on the palate. More. I don't know. It turns more. I don't know. Just more of a. I don't know what to say. It's a really interesting and delightful whiskey. I'm curious what it was. I mean, initially I was thinking, it's like a Scotch because of the orchard fruit, the apple, the honey that I got in there, the bit of vanilla. leaning towards a Scotch, and these are single malts, but that leaned towards barley. But there's so much more in there that makes me think this can't be a barley. Um, so I'm really interested, Philip. I hope you're watching. I hope you put something in the comments of which one this was, because it just seems like it can't be a barley. There's so much more complexity in there. Like that herbal tea is nice. That how it goes on the palate, and it's just this nice, creamy, honey, buttery toffee on the palate, and the finish is really nice. This finish is nice. I get that herbal tea spice like through my palate, and I get that creamy vanilla all the way to the back of the palate. And the only place I'm getting any kind of heat at all on this one, so I'm very curious what the proof would be on this, is just very little bit on the back of the palate and throat. Very good one. Philip, thank you for your sharing your some of your favorites with me. I really appreciate that. Now we move on to another good whiskey bro of mine. His name is Kevin, and he sent me a handful of samples as well. And we've got here a Starlight Toasted Barrel, and I've always wanted to try Starlight, so I'm very thankful that he sent that. But I didn't choose that one. And he also sent me a rum, and truly, my wife and I both are rum lovers, so I have to save that till my wife is back in town. I think she'd be sad if I sipped that one and didn't share it with her. He sent me a 13th Colony cask rye, and I've never had a 13th Colony, so it's very tempting to crack that one open. But that wasn't my choice. And he also sent me a Highland Park 18. And this one, oh, it was so tempting because, I don't know if you can, yeah, right here, on my Scotch shelf, I've got a Highland 12. And I really wanted to compare the two. But this video could run on and on with all the things that I wanted to do in my head with this video. So I'll save that for another time. What I had to rest on is because when you have a friend in the bourbon community that, like Kevin, who really knows who I am. So Kevin, if you're watching, thank you, Kevin, for this. But this is a redneck review, right? And what does a redneck truly appreciate? Well, it's got to be ass pocket whiskey, right? I mean, how can I go wrong with this? And ass pocket whiskey is a whiskey that was started by a musician, Derek Truck. He's a guitarist, and he started it because he was sick of all the hype about whiskeys that were driving costs up. So his goal was to make a good whiskey at an affordable price. And so they don't distill anything, as I understand it. They go out and they do, they pick some barrels and then they do some blending and they make some good whiskey that way. And here on the back, they even have a little write-up. Derek and Danny, two true bourbon lovers, have spent much of their careers gaining access to the best barrels in the world. The Search, which is the name of this bottle, The Search, a 10-year-old bourbon whiskey. The Search is their way of letting the rest of us in on some of their exceptional discoveries, bottled in ass pocket size to crack, share, and enjoy good times with good friends. So right there, I mean, just that saying itself is what this week is all about, right? That bourbon community, that whiskey community, your bourbon friends, your whiskey friends, that you're willing to share your whiskey with. And Kevin, he took his own bottle and sent what was left in this bottle to me so I could sample some ass pocket whiskey. Being the Alchemist, an old redneck here doing a review. So this is at 107 proof, and usually I shy away from celebrity whiskeys and things like that because I just get too afraid that they're selling a bottle based on hype. But this one just has me intrigued. And also, from what I understand too, is they bottle everything that they do in this 200 milliliter bottle, this ass pocket size. So let's give this one a try. Just the basic caramel and a hint of vanilla. I even say some nice barrel spices hitting me there. But let me do my usual sips and cleanse my palate just a little bit more. Do my usual sips and see if things develop a little bit more on the nose. And as y'all know, can't wait to get in on that sip to see what the palate has to say. That's an interesting one. It's a little bit drying on the front end, but it has a hint of like that bean nuttiness on the front of my palate. And then that nuttiness changes to a nice caramel mid palate, and then it gets to the back of the palate, and then it does get a little, I'd say, a barrel tannins in the back of the palate, but the tongue and the mid palate, the tip of the palate, front of the palate, the mid palate are really nice. I like that little bit of a nuttiness, even though it's a bit drying on the front of the palate, and on the nose it's still distinctly barrel spices. And I have to say, a nice mixture of cinnamon and nutmeg, because it's not just mild like nutmeg or sweet like nutmeg. It's got a little bit more of that spice like cinnamon, but they're dampened together. It's a mild mixture of the two. And 107 proof, there's no proof hitting me at all on this one. It's a really easy sipper. And that barrel is quite prevalent in this sip. And I do like barrel on my sip. I do like it. But the barrel is a bit drying on this one. So if you've got to really like barrel, and you've got to like the whiskeys that really dry your palate and your mouth to enjoy this one. So Kevin, to you, I say thank you, Whiskey Bro, for sharing your favorites with me. I truly appreciate it, and I appreciate this community. Now next, we're going to move on to a friend of mine. His name is Derek, and he sent me a little treat from Texas. He did toured some distilleries in Texas and gave me some samples. And I appreciate this one on account of I was telling Derek I've never really had too many Texas whiskeys except for my Devil's River that you see over here, and I particularly like them. I do have a Garrison Brothers, just one. I've got their honey, and it's very, very distinct, very earthy, and quite unique. And I was interested in more, and so I had particularly mentioned one in particular that we'll get to it because it ended up being the one that I chose. Um, but what Derek sent me here is a Texas cask strength, a Texas sherry cask, and a finished whiskey is always hard for me to turn down or to pass up because I love my finished whiskeys, my finished bourbons. But the one that I had to go for is the one that, this is where, you've got your whiskey friends that they pay attention and they share what they have with a fellow whiskey lover, fellow whiskey friend who shares an appreciation for what they have. And I asked for a Still Austin. And he gave me a sample of a Still Austin 7-year. And a Still Austin 7-year, if I'm not mistaken, I believe is their bottled in bond, so that would be 100 proof. And the thing I find interesting about Still Austin Distillery is, of course, they're located in Texas because these are Texas whiskeys. They do as much of a grain to glass as they can. And what I mean by that is they don't farm their own grains, as far as I can tell, but they do buy from all local farmers. But from the point that grain hits their facility, it's all done in-house. So they do all the milling. They make their own mash, of course, and they do their own distilling, and they do their own bottling and the whole process themselves. So, once that grain is harvested by the local farmers and brought to the distillery, every bit of it is taken care of in-house, from grinding the grain to bottling the whiskey. So Still Austin has me intrigued for that reason. And so I'm very thankful, Derek, for the Still Austin sample, and let's see what we've got. One thing to mention too about Still Austin, I think it's worth mentioning on account of I was expecting more barrel on the nose because it's aged in Texas, and Texas has so much heat and so little humidity. It takes less time for the whiskey to age, and on a 7-year, I was curious how that would be, but how strong that would be, and how that barrel intense that barrel notes would be, but it's really not. And what Still Austin does is they have a process that actually, as it goes through the aging process, that drips or slowly releases more distilled water into the barrels to add that freshness to the whiskey, and it's a process that they believe also draws more of the sugars and sweetness and flavor out of the barrel through the aging process while it's down there in that Texas heat. And I have to say, on the nose so far, it seems like that they've accomplished that. So let's go in for a few sips and see how things open up. Quite good. First thing on the palate is it's really more of a not really. It's not really a cherry sweetness, but it's more like dates, I would have to say. And it's not really raisins. I'd have to go with dates, a nice date sweetness. Easy to nose, easy to sip at 100 proof. On the nose, I'm getting that same date-like, um, that same date-like nose, and then that barrel that I was talking about up front, that was really prevalent up front. And the combination of that barrel, those spices, it's mainly a cinnamon, but that cinnamon and dates really is quite inviting. It really pulls you in for another pour, and then you get that sweet vanilla on the nose as well. Yeah, and it's all there on the palate. That sweet vanilla introducing a nice caramel, really, on this one. Not like a really intense caramel, just a nice caramel that complements the date and barrel spice in here. And on the palate, I can't say that the barrel spice is as strongly cinnamon as it is on the nose, but you still get that barrel spice, and it's nice. And one thing I enjoy about a whiskey, and yeah, y'all can laugh at me in the comments if you want, and please feel free to do so. Um, but when that heat hits me on the tip of the tongue, I don't know why, but I really enjoy a whiskey that just gets me on the tip of the tongue. And this one does that. It's almost like the pour bounces back after hitting the back of the palate. I get a little bit of heat in the back of the palate. I get that barrel in the back of the palate. So the finish is long and it's barrely, and it's got that light cinnamon spice. The mid palate had the nice vanilla caramel and the dates, but then it just bounces back, and then on the tip of the tongue, you just get this nice heat. That to me is just a nice way to end a pour, and that one's very nice. So to you, Derek, I say thank you for sharing your favorite whiskeys with me, and especially for listening to me when I said, "Boy, I'd love to have a still Austin sometime and know what that's all about." Because I've never had one until this moment, and that's what the whiskey community is all about. Folks that share their favorite pours. So now let's move on to our last one. Now our last one actually comes from a whiskey friend who's also a fellow YouTuber. He does his own whiskey YouTubes. That's Cowboy Whiskey Adventures. So please take the time to look the Cowboy up. Again, that's Cowboy Whiskey Adventures. Look him up. He does a good job. He does a good job up in his whiskey room, doing some reviews and talking about some of his favorite stuff. And he gave me a challenge too. Again, sending me some good samples Right here we've got an Oregon Spirit bottled and bond wheat whiskey. I love me some wheat. I'm not familiar with Oregon Spirit, so it was really hard for me to pass this one up. It's 100 proof, bottled and bond, so hard to turn up a wheat whiskey and a new whiskey from a new distillery that I'm not familiar with, but I had a pass on that one. And then Remus Master Distiller Experimental Series, and this one is aged in I'm going to slaughter this, so yeah, you all can nail me in the comments for this one too. Aged in Seguin Moreau barrels. And I love, again, like I said earlier, I love me a finished whiskey, so to have a whiskey that's aged in barrels that I don't even know what they are would have been intriguing tonight, just to see what that's all about. But I'm going to have to save that one. And the one that came super close was Ghost Dog Whiskey, which is ghost pepper infused. Even the proof is only 80 proof. I imagine that's because there's something with the ghost pepper infusion. But dang, I love me some spice. Ghost peppers on their own may be a little bit too hot for me, but it's just intriguing. Boy, I wanted to try this one tonight with y'all, but there's a reason that I didn't do that one. Even though that also, after I try that one, that also could make a good old-fashioned recipe, because being the old-fashioned alchemist, I got to get creative, and boy, I can think of some recipes for that one. But the one that made the cut tonight was Copper Works. And the reason Copper Works is the one that I chose is because the cowboy in his videos talks about Copper Works. And you can tell he has a passion for this distillery. It seems as though the distillery is local to him, and he really likes their whiskeys. And so to have a Copper Works, a distillery that I didn't know about at all until I started watching the Cowboy Whiskey Adventures, and I really, again, encourage you all to do so. This is what shows it. When you've got a fellow whiskey bro who has a passion for a distillery and a passion for a whiskey, it's hard to turn that one up. And the Copper Works also has an interesting story. From what I understand, and Wyatt, if you're tuning into this, please fact check me and put in the comments where I've gone wrong with Copper Works, or if I've even got the right Copper Works, but I don't think there's any other Copper Works out there. But the interesting story about Copper Works is it was a couple of friends who really liked making high-end craft beer. And they actually decided that it was time for them to go to scale with that and start a craft brewery. But as they got serious about it, they realized that the craft brewery market was pretty saturated. And so they pondered a bit and got a crazy idea in their head, much like myself when I pondered a bit about this this ghost pepper whiskey, and got some crazy ideas in my head about a really good old fashioned with that one that, boy, I'd love to share with a cowboy sometime. But the crazy idea that they got is, how about instead of a brewery, we make a distillery? But not just your average spirits, your average whiskey. Let's make a hopless, yes everyone, a hopless beer out of the same high quality grains that we would use in our beer, and then distill it. And the grain that they choose that's similar to what goes in the beer is barley. So to me, we're talking about an ASM, an American single malt. And so what I believe I have here would be an American single malt. Wyatt, again, uh, let me know if I'm onto something or if I'm way off base. So let's go in for a nose and a sip. Okay, the nose is initially sweet, but it's not like the usual. You hear me rattle off uh, caramel and toffee and vanilla sweetness, but the initial sweetness is not really any of those. It's more of a sweet, ripe fruit note. But let's warm my palate up to it and see how everything else opens up. Oh my, that's got some viscosity on it. That one really clings to the Glen right there. Okay, that's good. That is so good. That's got some proof to it. 133.4 proof. That is nice. And that proof gives you a flavor punch. Now I got to figure out what those flavors are. It's very, again, it's got that ripe fruit, sweetness, but there's more to it on the palate. Oh, that proof is nice. Oh, that's really nice. On the palate, the sweetness is got a nice. Is it melted caramel or is it melted? Oh, what the heck? That's. Give me a second here. Okay, the nose and the palate are different on that ripe fruit I was telling you. On the nose, this is very distinctly a ripe peach, and I'm not kidding you. I could sit here and nose this one. In fact, when I'm done with this, I might have to take the rest of this, and sit back in my recliner and just nose this because this is truly distinctly a ripe peach on the nose. Like after you've bitten into a peach, I don't know if any of y'all have done that, but after you've bitten into a peach and you've got that nice sweet peach smell, that is this whiskey right here. And on the palate, you've got there's a nice vanilla cream and caramel. Or is it really, see, I'm struggling here, folks. All my whiskey community friends. Is it caramel? Is it really when you melt brown sugar on the stove? It might be a little closer to that. I need just a bit more to determine what that sweetness is. There's a little bit of cinnamon now too. I don't know. So you get a ripe peach, you get some vanilla cream, and some cinnamon. I mean, that's just delightful, everyone. That is just delightful. And on the palate, it's really buttery, so I'm gonna have to go with like a buttery, melted brown sugar, vanilla cream. And that fruitiness is still there on the palate, but it's really not that peach on my palate. And I really want it to be, because on the nose it is just inviting. But on the palate, on the palate, it's lost a little bit in how nice that vanilla, buttery, melted brown sugar cream sauce is. And then you get that slight fruit sweetness in there, but that peach is not so pronounced. So could it be peach? Yeah. You could maybe talk me into another tropical fruit if you were sitting here across the barrel from me and tasted it and had your own opinion. You might be able to sway me one way or the other, because it's just not coming out that strong. But I tell you what, that proof really brings out those flavors. I love a proof on my whiskey. And on this one, the finish lingers nicely. It does, I have to say, in the very back of my throat, it does dry things out a little bit. Back to the palate, it dries things out a little bit. So I've got that. And nothing's negative here, because that sweet, buttery, vanilla cream, brown sugar is all across my palate. And that is so nice. And again, on this whiskey, I got on the tip of my tongue, on the tip of the palate, just that nice heat resting there as this finish just lasts. It's a nice long finish. You can sit here and nose this one. Again, grab this one, sit in your recliner, nose those peaches for a long time. Peaches and cream, really. Nose it for a long time, because that finish is just there, and it's delightful. So, as you all know, I'd love to have you come back around. So if you would, please hit that like, subscribe, and that bell. And as always, please take it easy. Don't drink and drive. Cheers.